Hey there, welcome back to No Recipe Required. I'm Dave. Fish is something we all gotta eat more of. I'm probably not as good as I should be, but I'm getting better, and certainly a great recipe helps. I've got a couple halibut fillets. I'm gonna show you how to do an herb crust to those fillets. We're gonna go ahead and serve it on a little potato puree or mashed potatoes and some mushroom broth. Let's go ahead, I'll show you how to make it. For our halibut dish tonight, first thing I'm going to do is actually start off with my mushroom broth, because that will be able to sit around for a while I cook everything else off. I've got a pan here, put on the heat, and I've got some sliced shiitake mushrooms. I'm going to go ahead and saute these off until they've given up their water, get nice and brown and sauteed through. Go ahead and drop them in that hot pan with a little bit of salt. Maybe a little bit more oil on mine. And I'm just going to let these go. It's probably going to be about 20 minutes of total cooking time to get these fully reduced and sauteed down. We'll come back, check in about halfway through. Okay, so I've cooked my shiitake mushrooms on medium to medium-low heat for probably 20 minutes, like I said. They've, the texture, they've definitely become firm. They've given up most of their water. And they are, they're fully cooked. They're going to be nice, tender. They're going to be tender yet have that kind of chewy consistency. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of pepper, and then I'm also going to turn the heat all the way down. And then my pan's a little dry, so I'm going to add a little bit more olive oil, and then add a garlic clove and a shallot, and just mix that in and let those ingredients saute before we and just soften up before we go ahead and add a little bit of chicken stock to create that beautiful mushroom broth. Okay, once my shallots and garlic have softened up and sauteed a little bit, you don't need or want them even browned at all. I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit. I turn the heat up. I'm going to add a little bit of white wine just to get a little bit of acid in the broth, and we're going to let that reduce, which will go pretty quickly because that was just a couple tablespoons. And then once that's evaporated a little bit, we'll go ahead and add some chicken stock, and I'm going to let this come up to the boil. The mushrooms are going to soften up a little bit, release their flavor, everything will kind of combine, and this will eventually get down into our mushroom broth. I'm really just going to let it come up to heat and boil for just a couple minutes, then shut it off. We can let it sit, and we'll reheat it when we're ready to serve it. Let's go ahead and make the herb crust for our halibut. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and do it in the food processor. If you had to do it by hand, you probably could. It's going to be a lot of chopping. What I've got here, I've got just some croutons, regular old salad croutons. If you had, bread, pieces of like day-old bread, that would work as well. I'm going to go ahead and drop those into my food processor. And then I've got some parsley, which I'm just going to kind of tear apart a little bit and drop that in as well. I have probably half a cup of croutons and maybe maybe half a cup, third to half a cup of loosely packed parsley here as well. In addition to parsley, parsley obviously works great. That's why I'm using it. But you can certainly use, you can use basil, you can use cilantro, you can use almost anything you want in this herb dressing. Really, that's it. That's going to be our crust. I'm going to go ahead and put my lid on and blend this guy together. We'll come back once I've gotten it done a few pulses. Okay, so after just a couple minutes, all those croutons have broken down as well as the parsley, and I essentially have a nice almost sand-like consistency, wet sand-like consistency between the parsley and the breadcrumbs. That's exactly what we're looking for. I'm going to go ahead and dump this out onto a plate, and then we'll be able to bread our halibut. Okay, so here we've got our couple halibut fillets that I'm cooking off tonight. The fillets like this, fresh fish, give it a smell. It shouldn't really smell fishy at all or overly strong. This, the halibut I think is an awesome fish. Nice white flesh when it cooks up. A little bit flaky, but it's got a little firmness to it as well, which I definitely like. you definitely, even if you buy quote-unquote boneless fillets, you definitely do want to feel around, make sure there's no bones in there, and also look for any, any skin or scales or anything like that. Like this piece here, I can tell, on the side here, it's just got a couple of these dark spots. There's certainly no harm in it, but usually those are either little pieces of flesh or sometimes what they call the bloodline, and they can be, really very strongly flavored, and maybe not taste the best or not the most appealing. So if I've got the time, I'll just look through and clean off my fish like that. Before we cook it, I want to take it out of the fridge for about 15 minutes or so, let it come up to room temperature. Then we'll go ahead and we'll bread these. Okay, it's time to go ahead and salt or crust our halibut with our herb dressing or herb crust. Now, just because we're putting a crust on it doesn't mean we skip the seasoning. We do, just like we normally would, salt and pepper on both sides of the fish. And then what we're going to go ahead and do, I've got the crust that we cooked off earlier right here, just laid out on a plate. Spread it out into a thin layer, at least as big as the fish. And then we're only going to crust one side. Otherwise, it'd be a little too powerful or strong. So we're going to go ahead and take the fish, lay it down in that crust, give it a good press so it sucks up and takes that herb and breadcrumb, and then pull it off, and we've got our nice crust on one side. We'll go ahead and take our plate, just spread it out again, make a good platform for our next fillet. Do the same thing, nice little press down, pull it up, and we've got our crust. Let's go ahead and cook these up. Okay, let's go ahead and do our last step, our herb crusted halibut. I've got my mushroom broth done. I've got my potatoes done, and last thing we're going to do, because it takes the least amount of time, is cook our halibut. I've got a couple tablespoons of olive oil in a pan here. I like when I'm using fish and a herb crust like this to use a non-stick pan. It just makes it a little bit easier. I'm not looking to have anything stick to the pan because I'm not making a pan sauce. I want that herb crust to stick to the fish. The combo, I use the butter because it tastes good. I use the olive oil to make sure the butter doesn't burn. I've got my fish here. I'm going to lay it breaded side down. And then once it's down, I'm not going to touch it. I'm just going to let that sear, do its job. We're going to cook the crust right on there, and over medium-high heat or so. I'm not going to fiddle with it. If I do, I risk that the breadcrumbs, like I said, just coming right off. So we're going to go ahead and cook it until I start seeing the fish actually go opaque, kind of from the edges up. We're going to flip it, we're going to cook it on the other side, and then we will be done. Okay, we're back. So fresh fish like this doesn't take a long time to cook. I can see on the edges here, it's getting, like I said, opaque. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that over. And I've got a beautifully golden brown crust on that side. Let's go ahead and do the other. And I'm going to finish off cooking on this side. If I made my mushroom broth ahead of time and it's room temperature, it's cooled down, I put that back on the flame to get that nice and warm so you get everything done together. Same thing with the potatoes. And let's just go ahead. This will just take another minute or so. You're looking for a nice firm texture. And we'll go ahead and plate this up. Alright, let's go ahead and plate up our dish tonight. We've got some beautiful mashed potatoes. I'm going to go ahead and put those on the plate right down in the middle. This is almost, with the amount of butter and cream I put in there, this is almost a puree. Then I'll go ahead and take my herb crusted halibut fillet, lay that right on top of my potatoes, and then finally I've got this delicious mushroom broth, and we're going to go just right around the plate with a good amount of that broth. This is essentially our sauce. And then make sure we get a few of those mushrooms kind of scattered around as well. And there's our dish. It's been a pleasure tonight. I'll see you next time on No Recipe Required.